Greetings, one and all, once again to Exploring Arda, a Tolkien-centered podcast where I am your host, Jackson, and I go through a bunch of Tolkien's works other than Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Hopefully you guys are back for another episode. This might be on YouTube, but also, as the new year kind of made me kind of like think about it, I also run another podcast called Drink and Dried, and then kind of a smaller one called Books and Baggins, actually. And we decided to pretty much combine all three of these shows into one. So the collective works, I suppose, of everything, especially for the audio, because this is more for like the audio version, it is called the Bookworm Cinema Productions. So we decided to come up with a cool little catchy name like that. Obviously, this is still going to go on my personal YouTube channel, so that doesn't change. But if you want to hear the audio version, it will be under Bookworm Cinema Productions. If you search that up on any of like the platforms, I think it's on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, maybe Castbox, and then obviously YouTube. So it's kind of exciting for me to kind of like branch out and have like a collective thing like that. So check out my other shows if you guys want to. I would greatly appreciate it. But as for this show, I will be continuing the Silmarillion-themed stories. Like I said, hopefully you guys went back and saw the long list that I have of all the Tolkien books that I plan to cover. And obviously this first one is none other than The Fall of Númenor. Yes, hopefully the light can kind of see it. Really cool cover, definitely. It's amazing. So... yeah, it is. It's very fantastic. So, and this is Alan Lee's illustrations. And because there is, within the book, there are actual illustrations, and whenever one pops up, I'll let you guys kind of peek in. It's very cool stuff, like on the, obviously, hold on, a little bit of finagling here. So like on the inside here, it is the actual Fall of Númenor, which is very, very cool. His painting skills are amazing. So, with this book, it is pretty much the Akallabeth from the Silmarillion, the end of the actual, like the whole end of the book. So either I will read through the whole thing and possibly go back and reread that last Akallabeth part, just to kind of like finish everything off. But as for like the whole Silmarillion story, it is done, so... There is an intro to this, and pretty much saying that this is basically the Second Age with the Fall of Númenor. This is when Sauron basically is trying to take control, and he is obviously almost as bad as Morgoth, which, I mean, that's saying a lot. But it's kind of like an introduction of the Second Age and things like that. And I decided not to go through the introduction just because it is a lot. And I kind of wanted to get right back into the story. So this part 1 is called Foundation of the Grey Havens and of Lindon. And of course the Grey Havens, obviously with any Lord of the Rings fans, everybody knows that that is where they go to at the end of Return of the King to sail into the Undying Lands. So pretty much that's where the elves end up founding in the Second Age, is Lindon, that kind of green country by the coastal cliffs and pretty much, Grey Havens and whatnot. So I think for the first book of the year for Exploring Arda, I'll get right into it. So here it is. Foundation of the Grey Havens and of Lindon. In his 1955 appendices to Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien wrote of the Second Age. These were the dark years for men of Middle-earth, but the years of the glory of Númenor. In what Christopher Tolkien identified as his father's first attempt at establishing a time scheme, later to become the Tale of Years, the Second Age was described as the Black Years, or the age between the great battle and defeat of Morgoth, and the fall of Númenor and the overthrow of Sauron. These vastly conflicted times, and in particular, the monumental tragedy represented by Númenor, greatness established but then brought low and destroyed, resulted through the chronicling of the Second Age, in both the shaping of the history of Middle-earth and the physical reshaping of the whole world, a story that provides a powerful and far-reaching prelude to the great drama of the War of the Ring. The story begins in the closing days of year 587 of the First Age. In the great battle and the tumults of the fall of Thangordadrim, there were mighty convulsions in the earth, and Beleriand was broken and waylaid, and northward and westward many lengths sank beneath the waters of the great sea. In the east, in Osirian, the walls of Ered Luin were broken, and a great gap was made in them towards the south, and a gulf of the sea flowed in. Into that gulf the river Lune fell by a new course, and it was called therefore the Gulf of Lune. That country had of old been named Lindon by the Noldor, those of the second clan of the Elves, and this name it bore thereafter. At the end of the first age, the Valar held council, and the Eldar in Middle-earth were summoned, if not commanded, at least sternly counseled, to return to the west, and there to be at peace. Those that hearkened to the summons dwelt in the Isle of Eresia, and there is in that land a haven that is named Avalone, for it is of all cities the nearest to Valinor, and the Tower of Avalone is the first sight that the mariner beholds when at last he draws nigh to the undying lands over the leagues of the sea. Not all the elven kind answered to the Valar's call, but dwelt still in Middle-earth lingering, unwilling yet to forsake Beleriand, where they had fought and labored long. Gil-galad, son of Fingon, was their king, and with them was Elrond half-elven, son of Erendil the Mariner, and brother of Elros, first king of Númenor. And before I actually go further into it, there is this painting again. This is almost like the letters from Father Christmas again. Very cool depiction by Alan Lee. He does a fantastic job. So I guess before I go further, yeah, pretty much this tells that with the great seas that were in pretty much Beleriand, this pretty much the far east of Beleriand gets saved, kind of saved. The whole area of Lindon is pretty much almost all. I have like a map up on my wall here. There's like Forlindon and Harlindon, and there's the Gulf of Lune, and that's where the Great Havens are at. There's not much left of Beleriand when it gets literally sunk into the ocean, so it's quite scary. So, and then obviously the elves pretty much linger still in Middle-earth because they still think that this is their protected lands. They're the ones that defended this land and tried to protect it against Morgoth, so of course some of them are hesitant at coming back to the Valar's call, even after so many years of the Valar not really participating in the war against Morgoth, which is actually one of the things that I think I added into my Silmarillion review of the Valar's very much, not so much hostile, but just almost a blatant disregard to the children of Iluvatar, the people who they were, I guess, was supposed to protect, but they didn't. So, and that can go on forever. But let's just continue on here. So, oh, also, there's a lot of alsos here. During this whole thing, there will be, I wonder if you guys can see it or not, there will be, like, right here where my finger's at, there are, like, comments, because this was edited by Brian Sibley, and so there's a lot that are kind of notes and commentary throughout the story, so, and I'll just be reading them through like that, so, on we go again. Commenting on this in his 1951 letter to Milton Waldman, Tolkien wrote, "We see a sort of second fall, or at least error, of the elves. There was nothing wrong essentially in their lingering against counsel, still sadly with the mortal lands, of their old heroic deeds. But they wanted to have their cake without eating it. They wanted the peace and bliss and perfect memory of the West, and yet to remain on the ordinary earth where their prestige as the highest people, above wild elves, dwarves and men, were greater than at the bottom of the hierarchy of Valinor. They thus became obsessed with fading, the mode in which the changes of time, the law of the world under the sun, was perceived by them. They became sad in their art, shall we say, antiquarian, and their efforts all really a kind of embalming, even though they also retain the old motive of their kind, the adornment of earth and the healing of its hurts. We hear of a lingering kingdom, in the extreme northwest, more or less, in what was left in the old lands of the Silmarillion under Gil-galad. In the beginning of this age, many of the High Elves still remained. Most of these dwelt in Lindon, west of the Ered Luin, but before the building of the Barad-dûr, many of the Sindar passed eastward, and some established realms in the forest far away, where their people were mostly Sylvan elves. Thranduil, king in the north of Greenwood the Great, was one of these. In Lindon, north of the Lune, dwelt Gilgalad, last heir of the kings of the Noldor in exile. He was acknowledged as High King of the Elves of the West. In Lindon, south of the Lune, dwelt for a time Celeborn, kinsman of Thingol. His wife was Galadriel, greatest of elven women. She was sister of Finrod Felagund, friend of men, once king of Nargothrond, who gave his life to save Beren, son of Barahir. Later some of the Noldor went to Eregion, upon the west of the Misty Mountains and near to the west gate of Moria. This they did because they learned that Mithril had been discovered in Moria. The Noldor were great craftsmen and less unfriendly to the dwarves than the Sindar, but the friendship that grew up between the people of Durin and the Elvensmiths of Eregion was the closest that there has ever been between the two races. Celebrimbor was lord of Eregion, and the greatest of their craftsmen. He was descended from Feanor. Galadriel did not go west at the downfall of Melkor, / Morgoth, in parentheses Morgoth, but crossed Ered Lindon with Celeborn and came into Eriador. When they entered that region, there were many Noldor in their following, together with Grey Elves and Green Elves, and for a while they dwelt in the country about Lake here comes the elven words again, Nenuiel, I'll say that, Evendim, north of the Shire. Celeborn and Galadriel came to be regarded as Lord and Lady of the Eldar in Eriador, including the wandering companies of Nandarin origin who had never passed west over Ered Lindon and come down into Osirian. Of Galadriel it is said that she was strong of body, mind, and will, a match for both the lore masters and the athletes of the Eldar in the days of their youth. Even among the Eldar she was accounted beautiful, and her golden hair was held a marvel unmatched. And the Eldar said that the light of the two trees, Laurelin and Telperion, had been snared in her tresses. From her earliest years she had a marvelous gift of insight into the minds of others, but judged them with mercy and understanding. In the account of the visit of the Fellowship of the Ring to Carascaladon in the February of year TA 3019, we have a description of Celeborn and Galadriel. The chamber was filled with a soft light. Its walls were green and silver, and its roof of gold. Many elves were seated there, on two chairs beneath the bole of the tree, and canopied by a living bough, there sat, side by side, Celeborn and Galadriel. They stood up to greet their guests, after the manner of elves, even those who were accounted mighty kings. Very tall they were, and the lady no less tall than the lord, and they were grave and beautiful. They were clad wholly in white, and the hair of the lady was of deep gold, and the hair of the Lord Celeborn was of silver, long and bright. But no sign of age was upon them, unless if it were in the depths of their eyes, for these were keen as lances in the starlight, and yet profound, the wells of deep memory. Writing in Unfinished Tales, Christopher Tolkien opined, there is no part of the history of Middle-earth more full of problems than the story of Galadriel and Celeborn, and readers wishing for a better understanding of that story should consult the history of Galadriel and Celeborn, Christopher's lengthy essay on the subject, which is included in part 2 of that work. So, we'll do a little quick break here. Pretty much, the whole thing in Galadriel and Celeborn is that they are, I suppose that they're considered the ultimate memory, or I guess the remnant of Valinor, especially with Galadriel and her hair. Obviously the Eldar pretty much say that the light of the two trees of Valinor are still within her, and especially her golden hair. So, and it makes sense because she traveled literally from Valinor all the way through the Helcaraxe and back into Middle-earth, so she's traveled a lot, she's faced a lot of things in her time, so she has my complete respect. Even if she's a fictional character, it doesn't matter, she's still really cool. And it's a reason why so many elves respect her as well in the books, obviously in Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. Not only the elves, just everyone, pretty much everyone, even Gimli. So, and it's obviously it's nice to kind of like, get a little refresher of some names, Galadriel, Celeborn, and then the name of Fellowship of the Ring. It's always nice to kind of hear it within these deep lore books. So, onward we go. Upon the shores of the Gulf of Lune, the elves built their havens and named them Mithlond, and there they held many ships, for the harborage was good. From the grey havens the Eldar ever and anon set sail, fleeing from the darkness of the days of earth. For by the mercy of the Valar, the firstborn could still follow the straight road and return, if they would, to their kindred in Eresia and Valinor beyond the encircling seas. At the end of the First Age, while the Eldar were summoned to take ship for the west, A different fate was presented to Elros and Elrond, the sons of Arendil, who were descended from a union between the Eldar and mankind, and known as the Paradil, or Half-Elven. To them the Valar gave an irrevocable choice to which kindred they would belong. Elrond chose to be of elven kind, and became a master of wisdom. To him, therefore, was granted the same grace as to those of the high elves that still lingered in Middle-earth, that when weary at last of the mortal lands, they could take ship from the Grey Havens and pass into the uttermost west. And this grace continued after the change of the world. But to the children of Elrond a choice was also appointed, to pass with him from the circles of the world, or, if they remained, to become mortal and die in Middle-earth. For Elrond, therefore, all chances of the War of the Ring were fraught with sorrow. Elros chose to be of mankind and remained with the Edain, but a great lifespan was granted to him many times that of lesser men. Alright, so that's pretty much the first segment here, and I see that we're not too far, so I'll go into the next segment, because each one isn't so much a chapter. Obviously you guys cannot see. Hold on a minute. It's kind of like marked not as chapters, but more of segments. And I'll go into the next one. Basically, Elrond chooses to become, like literally what I just read through, pretty much his half elven side. He chose to be elves, and then obviously Elros decided to become mortal, pretty much, with the mankind, but he was granted pretty much extra time throughout his mortal life, which is pretty cool. So we'll go right into the next section, I think, just because I have time for it. So here we go. Next section is the Edain reach Númenor. The Valar, the guardians of the world, who had been delegated by Eru Ilúvatar, the all-powerful transcendent creator, to shape and rule the world, also took thought for the fate of the race of men, or Edain, as they were called in the Sindarin language of the elves. The tribes of men who had become friends and noble allies of the elves, fighting alongside them in the struggles against Morgoth, were of three houses. The House of Beor, known as the first house of the Edain. The House of Haleth was the second house, known by among other names as the Folk of Haleth, the Halidin, and the third house was the Folk of Marek, later best known as the House of Hador. The history of their lives and deeds during the first age is told in the Silmarillion, which is true, so go check it out. The Valar, having taken counsel, determined to offer the Edain a means of being removed from the dangers of Middle-earth. The Valar, aided by Maiar, who were primordial spirit beings of the same order as the Valar but of less degree, their servants and helpers, brought into existence the island of Númenor. To the fathers of men of the three faithful houses rich reward also was given. Eonwe came among them and taught them, and they were given wisdom and power and life more enduring than any others of mortal race have possessed. A land was made for the Edain to dwell in, neither part of Middle-earth nor of Valinor, for it was sundered from either by a wide sea, yet it was nearer to Valinor. It was raised by Ossë out of the depths of the great water, and it was established by Aule and enriched by Yavanna. And the Eldar brought thither flowers and fountains out of Tol Eressëa. That land the Valar called Andor, the land of gift, and the star of Arendil shone bright in the west as a token that all was made ready, and as a guide over the sea, and men marveled to see that silver flame in the pass of the sun. Then the Edain set sail upon the deep waters, following the star, and the Valar laid a peace upon the sea for many days, and sent sunlight and a sailing wind, so that the waters glittered before the eyes of the Edain like rippling glass, and the foam flew like snow before the stems of their ships. But so bright was Rothinzil that even at morning men could see it glimmering in the west, and in the cloudless night it shone alone, for no other star could stand beside it. And setting their course towards it, the Edain came at last over leagues of sea, and saw afar the land that was prepared for them, Andor, the land of gift, shimmering in a golden haze. Then they went up out of the sea, and founded a country fair and fruitful, and they were glad. And they called that land Elena, which is starwards, but also Anadune, which is westerness, Númenore, with an E at the end, in the High Eldarin tongue. Alright, so a little bit of a small break here. It's really cool, personally for me, to see that the Valar are, back trying to help be the protectors of Arda, pretty much. Because they felt, pity upon them, of the Edain, because of their mortal lives, and they're very short. or also just because they just really felt bad for not helping out against Morgoth and his war, his wrathful and tremendous darkening wars. And they're like, maybe we should help these guys out at least. Like, let's build an island for them so that they're close to Valinor, but not quite to us yet. Which for the Edain is immensely, like, it's incredible for them. Obviously, they probably already know that they can't get to Valinor because they are the Edain, they are mortal. But it's just really cool to see that the Valar shape Númenor specifically for them, so that you can still see that the Valar do actually end up caring for the people of Arda. So, just really cool to see that. Back at it again here. Here it is. This was the beginning of that people that in the great elven speech are called the Dunedain, the Númenorians, kings among men. But they did not thus escape from the doom of death that Ilúvatar had set upon all mankind, and they were mortal still, though their years were long, and they knew no sickness ere the shadow fell upon them. Therefore they grew wise and glorious, and in all things more like to the firstborn than any other of the kindreds of men. And they were tall, taller than the tallest of the sons of Middle-earth, and the light of their eyes was like the bright stars. But their numbers increased only slowly in the land. For though daughters and sons were born to them, fairer than their fathers, yet their children were few. A more detailed account of the coming of the men of Middle-earth to the land prepared for them, and the length of time taken for the migration is recounted as follows. The legends of the foundation of Númenor often speak as if all the Edain that accepted the gift set sail at one time and in one fleet, but this is only due to the brevity of the narrative. In more detailed histories it is related, as might be deduced from the events and the numbers concerned, that after the first expedition led by Elros, many other ships, alone or in small fleets, came west bearing others of the Edain, either those who were at first reluctant to dare the great sea, but could not endure to be parted from those who had gone, or some who were far scattered and could not be assembled to go with the first sailing. Since the boats that were used were of elvish model, fleet but small, and each steered by one of the Eldar deputed by Círdan, it would have taken a great navy to transport all the people and goods that were eventually brought from Middle-earth to Númenor. The legends make no guess at the numbers, and the histories say little. The fleet of Elros is said to have contained many ships, according to some 150 vessels, to others 200 or 300, and to have brought thousands of the men, women, and children of the Edain, probably between 5,000 or at most 10,000. But the whole process of migration appears in fact to have occupied at least 50 years, possibly longer, and finally ended only when Círdan, no doubt instructed by the Valar, would provide no more ships or guides. But one command had been laid upon the Númenorians, the band of the Valar. They were forbidden to sail west out of sight of their own shores, or to attempt to set foot on the undying lands. For though a long span of life had been granted to them in the beginning, thrice that of lesser men, they must remain mortal, since the Valar were not permitted to take from them the gift of men, or the doom of men, as it was afterward called. For many years the Númenorians were to accept and observe the ban on their sailing so far westward that the coast of Númenor could no longer be seen, and were content though they did not fully understand the purpose of this ban. Manwë, king of the Valar and brother of the Dark Lord Melkor, was in matters of authority, though not in power, the greatest of the Ainur, and as the Lord of the Breath of Arda, was its ruler. And we got one little section here to read through, so I'm going to do that really quick. The realm of Númenor is held to have begun in the 32nd year of the Second Age, when Elros, son of Arendil, ascended the throne in the city of Armenelos, being then 90 years of age. It is written that the scepter was the chief mark of royalty in Númenor from the reign of the first king to that the 25th king, and that having survived for 3,287 years, it was lost with Ar-Pharazôn at the downfall. Therefore, Elros was known in the scroll of the kings by the name of Tar Miniatur, for it was the custom of the king to take their titles in the forms of the Quenya, or High Elven tongue, that being the noblest tongue of the world, and this custom endured until the days of, Ar Adunakor, in parentheses Tar Herunumen. There you go. And that is the finishing of the of the segment. I want to say chapter every time, but it is more of segments, really. Pretty much just like to kind of recap, is that... Sorry, okay, just making sure. Pretty much, the Edain get told almost in a way that even though they are so close to Valinor that they cannot sail that far west, like that's pretty much the Valar are like, okay, you can stay here, but you can't go further. They're almost like they almost treat them like pampered pests, pretty much. Like they're like, you can have this island, but stay away, stay away from Valinor, please. And I get it because it is part of the doom of mankind, pretty much set by Iluvatar. It's kind of a bummer, obviously, with the Edain. They are so close to Valinor. They're so close, but they can't quite get there. But it has been blessed by the Valar. It's very, obviously, as it says, they make it, fruitful, and they start to pretty much populate Númenor, and it's all pretty good so far, I would say. And Elros being, the half elven, he decides to pretty much, I think he's pretty much the first king, if I do believe so. But yeah, that is the first couple segments of the Fall of Númenor. Pretty much just the beginnings of how and why they got there, which is kind of simple, and that's pretty much what the Fall of Númenor is all about, all these different segments. So it'll be fun to kind of just, read through it. Sometimes it'll be longer episodes. I'll go through maybe, 2, 3, 4 segments at a time, depending on what I got in front of me, so, and how much time I have. But yeah, that is all for today. I'm very excited to begin another year of exploring Arda. I'm very, very excited. Obviously, I have my other 2 podcasts, but this one's more of my Tolkien. This is my personal one, the one that I work so hard on. So I hope you guys appreciate all the work that I do, and hopefully I remember to put my turtle away, because he is always loud when I record, all the time. So actually, I can actually go back to kind of promoting my own book called The Lands of Ordia, Power of Heaven. It is available on Amazon Publishing, and I would greatly appreciate it if one of you guys could actually get a copy of it. It would just be amazing. I am actually working on writing the second book currently, and I can already tell that my writing has improved. And if you read the first book, it is very much, I would say, like, edited strongly by other people. So the second book's very much a project, a very personal project, just like exploring Arda. Kind of like putting my full effort into it and trying not to have other people tinker with it as much as I would want to. So I'm very excited for my own series to continue in that way. And I also have ideas of possibly narrating it, the first book of mine, onto this channel, but maybe it'll just be like a monthly thing, or I'm still working out the kinks with all that detail, but we'll kind of see how that all turns out. So I think with all that rambling on all that stuff done with, just be sure to stay tuned for another episode, and may the light of Elbereth be with you all. Farewell.